Okay, so I'm going to give you a very short introduction to the 2015 United Kingdom general election. In order to do that, I'm going to start by drawing the UK, which is a very difficult shape to draw. But apparently it looks like a witch riding a pig, as you'll see in a moment. So we'll start off with the witch's hat, which sort of looks something like this. As you can see, the witch's head and hat represents Scotland, apologies to the Scots, and the body really represents the north of England. The pig down here is Wales, and the south of England sweeps round like this. And finally, off in the Irish Sea, we have the northern part of the island of Ireland, which remains part of the United Kingdom. So although the United Kingdom election is a nationwide election, we should think of it really as four distinct battlegrounds because of the way in which the political parties are going to contest these different areas. So we have Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and England. Now, Scotland, the battle for Scotland is a battle for 59 seats. The battle for Wales is a battle for 40. Northern Ireland brings 18 to the prize, and the bulk of seats in the British House of Commons come from England, and that's 533. So we look at each of these areas, what we see is something quite different. In the north, in Scotland, what we basically have is a battle between Labour and the Scottish Nationalist Party. Conservatives in Scotland are extremely rare. In fact, there's probably more white rhinos than there are Conservative MPs in Scotland. Now, this was originally a Labour stronghold, but in the last 5 years, the SNP has mounted an enormous challenge and is expected to really give Labour a bit of a clobbering in Scotland. Wales is a little bit of a more complex picture. In the northern part of Wales, the nationalist Plaid Cymru party is strong. The south has always been a Labour stronghold. This was where most of Britain's coal mines were based, and the coal valleys and towns still remain quite loyal and strong supporters of the Labour Party. And the Conservatives pick up a few in the borderland areas between Wales and England. So that takes us to the rest of the country, and in England as a whole, it's pretty much a contest between the Conservatives and the Labour. There are a couple of exceptions and a couple of nuances here. First of all, if I draw a line here, this is Doc Martin country. For those of you familiar with the TV show, this is the southwest of England. And here what we have seen really is a battle between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats are expected to do very badly in this election. They're probably the biggest losers. That's largely because of enormous dissatisfaction and defect and unhappiness with the party. It had to abandon its pledge not to raise tuition fees for university students, and the party's leader, Nick Clegg, is also very unpopular. So Conservative hoping for some gains in the southwest. In the rest of the country, we have this Labour-Tory heavyweight battle. But again, a nuance, we can divide the country sort of like this. The northern part of England has always been a pretty strong Labour support base, particularly because of the industrial areas of the northeast where shipbuilding was strong, the textile industry in the northwest of England, mining in and around Yorkshire, and the West Midlands was always an industrial powerhouse too. In the south, it's largely a Conservative stronghold, with another important battleground obviously being the capital itself, London. And here, Labour is very strong in inner city London, in the core areas of central London, where we find a larger proportion of minorities, a much more diverse population, and the outer fringes is where we find more of the Conservative seats and a little bit more of seats that could change hands between either of these two parties. So, as you can see, a very complex position, complex situation. Northern Ireland is a completely different kettle of fish. I won't go into it in any real detail. In Northern Ireland, politics really corresponds to a sectarian division, with Protestant unionist parties supporting the continuation of the relationship with the United Kingdom, and nationalist parties supporting closer relations or reunification with Ireland. So that politics is very different from what we see on the mainland. Now, in terms of who is going to win, the big question. Well, for the last 50 years, it's been quite easy to sort of predict what's going to happen because the United Kingdom was much less fragmented politically. And so we used to talk of a swingometer that used to swing between Conservative and the Labour Party. And as you can see by these results, in 1945, Clement Attlee won the election and created the National Health Service. 1950, Labour won again. But in 1951, the Conservatives were back in power under Winston Churchill. The Conservatives won again in 1955 and in 1959. And then in 1964, the Labour Party came back to power with Harold Wilson, famous for his pipe and his white heat of technology speech. He was re-elected again in 1966 before the Conservatives came back under Edward Heath in 1970. 1974 saw a hung parliament in Britain for the first time. First of all, in February, the Conservatives came to power again under Heath, but that didn't last very long, and in October 1974, a second election brought the Labour Party back to power. That brings us then to Margaret Thatcher, who won 3 successive elections, 1979, 1983, and in 1987. She was succeeded by John Major in 1992, which then led to the Blair years. And Blair copied Thatcher in many ways, not least the 3 successive victories. He won in 1997, he won in 2001, and he won in 2005. And that brought us to the 2010 election, which, although was a Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition, was an election that didn't produce a clear winner. And so politics in Britain has really started to fragment really from the 1970s onwards. So this swing between Labour and Tories now is much less a predictor of what's going to happen in the election as a whole. So what do I think the outcome is likely to be? Well, look at the polls. They've been pretty consistent. The Conservative Party at the moment lead in terms of the number of seats that are expected to be won by them. The figure is approximately 280. Now, the magic number that we need is 326 to have a majority in the House of Commons of just 1 vote. So you can see the Conservatives are quite far behind here. If we assume that the Liberal Democrats would join with them again in a second coalition, then we can add them into the equation. Now, the Liberal Democrats are expected to lose a lot of seats. We estimate that the Liberal Democrats will probably win about 25. This takes the Tory party up to 305 seats, still a long way off its target. In Northern Ireland, the dominant Protestant party is the DUP, and the DUP normally caucuses or votes with the Conservative Party. So we can add the 8 DUP MPs to this figure here. It takes us to 313. There's been much talk in this election about UKIP. UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, a far-right anti-immigration party, is polling around 10% of the vote. But that vote is dispersed quite evenly across the country. So it's estimated that the UKIP is not going to pick up many seats. In fact, we probably expect no more than about 1 seat to come to UKIP. If they also caucus with the Conservative Party reach 314. So as you can see here, well short of the 326 needed to form a government. So can Ed Miliband do better? Well, he starts off behind David Cameron. Most polls suggest the Labour Party will pick up about 270 seats. Okay, so the largest other opposition party in this election is going to be Nicola Sturgeon's Scottish National Party. They're estimated to be somewhere between 45 and 50 seats in the polls. Let's give them 47, smack bang in the middle. Add these two together, and we see that we've already reached 317, the magic number 326. Ed Miliband is much closer already than David Cameron was. Then there are a number of other parties that are of the centre-left whose support is likely to go with the Labour Party in one form or another. There's 3 nationalists from the Welsh Plaid Cymru Party that we can add. There are 3 from the nationalist, moderate nationalist Irish Northern Irish Party, the Social Democratic and Labour Party, which, although a nationalist party, also caucuses with the Labour Party usually. So we can add them in as well, throw in one Green, and we get to 324. So Ed Miliband is just short of the magic 326, but of course there's one party we're missing out here, and that is the Liberal Democrats. If the Liberal Democrats decide to jump ship, abandon the Conservatives, and bring their 25 seats to the Labour Party, then the 324 plus the 25 makes the magic number of 349, which gives the Labour coalition or a Labour minority party with the support of these parties enough votes to win the 2015 election.